Okay, the project for today is to get this old Dixon zero turn running. So it's been sitting outside in the woods for, I don't know, at least a decade since it last ran. As long as I can remember, this was a neighbor's. It was always sitting in their front yard under some trees, and you can tell. So I'm gonna see if I can bring it back to life just for the fun of it. If I can't, I'll at least clean it up and send it down the road to somebody who wants a project. So I originally thought the motor was stuck, but I reached up here and with two hands got it to move, and I see the belt moving down there with it. So I think something stuck or not disengaged. I'm not exactly sure how these work. I know they're chain driven on either side, and they have like a bowl shaped clutch that you put pressure on for either side to drive. I don't know how to get it to go into neutral, basically. I would think the lever just has to be in the center, but it seems to be stuck pretty tight, and that could just be from sitting. But first thing I'm going to do, since the pressure washer is out, is go ahead and clean this thing up and see what kind of difference that makes. Just to give you an idea of how long this thing's been sitting, this tire looks like it has air in it, but it doesn't. It's actually so rock hard, the rubber is, that it's holding up the weight of the mower. But I'll go around, put some air in it anyway, see what happens. That's probably good enough. How old these are, I don't want to have a blowout if I can help it. This one's pretty rough. Let's see what we can get out of it. I don't care if they leak down over time, but I'd like them to hold air for at least a little bit. Sounds like a hole. Yeah, and it's understandable. That's unfortunate. Well, good news is, came with a spare, and actually a whole other parts mower. So with any luck, we'll find one over there that holds air and swap that one out. I'll go ahead and do the fronts and see what happens with those. Well, it's just my luck. 3 out of the 4 tires hold air. Of course, this one did not, or not long enough to matter. As soon as I put it in, it was right back out. Went ahead and took the battery out, and sure enough, just to back up my claim, this battery was put in 12 years ago. So right around a decade. You gotta imagine the battery was probably in there for a little bit before it was parked. So anywhere from 10 to 12 years this thing's been sitting. I have another lawnmower battery. It's on the charger in there. It was dead, but a car battery ought to do the same thing. So I got some jumper cables hooked up to this car battery. About to hit the key and see if it'll turn over with the starter. More than likely, we're not going to get anything, but we can hope. Oh, come on, you can do it. Yeah, let me try to spin the motor back by hand, and we'll see if we can get anything. I think it's our belt holding us up down here. So you can see I try to turn the engine, the belt's moving with it. I don't know what's frozen up and what's not. So let me take a minute to take this belt off and see if that frees up our engine. Even with the plug out, I can't turn it. Okay, I got our problem figured out. So I thought the deck was disengaged, but it turns out this pin was rotted off inside of there. So when I looked up under here, I could tell that it was still engaged. I reached under by hand, disengaged the deck, still wouldn't turn. Then I figured out that the belt was rusted to the pulley, so once I worked it back and forth, I just got the motor to free up. So I haven't tried to crank it yet with the starter. We're about to try that now and see what happens. Okay. Sweet. Awesome. Let me take this air cleaner off here, and maybe we'll spray a little bit of starting fluid down there. And if it fires off with that, then we'll go into taking the carburetor off and cleaning that up, because I'm sure it needs gone through from having old gas sit in this tank for that long. All right. Surprisingly, everything is free on this carburetor. Springs back, it's not sticky. Choke works and springs back. Even the throttle cable, even though it's not holding it, whoops, here at the bottom, if I hold that, I can manually move the throttle. So all of that is free. I don't want to jinx myself, but this is going a lot easier than I thought it would. I already checked for spark. I had the plug out when you saw me cranking it over to earlier, and we do have spark there. So I'm just going to go ahead and give her a shot and see what happens. Okay. Wow. That's pretty good. So obviously I didn't hear any knocks or anything, but I'll try that one more time before I go any further with it. But if it sounds that good again, I'm going to go ahead and pull the bowl off this carburetor and see what it looks like. If that looks nice and the needle's free, I'm just going to add gas to this tank. Nice healthy dose there. That sounds good enough to me to go a little bit further, so that's what I'll do. I'll dig into that carburetor and show you what I find. I knew I shouldn't have said anything. It's not going to run off that. Frozen solid, everything. This would be a really tough rebuild on this carburetor, so I'm going to cheat. We happen to have a stash of old lawnmower carburetors. I'm going to go dig through that and see if I can find one that is similar to this to bolt on and hopefully get us going. I should have suspected, but I thought we got lucky and the tank, evaporated or drained over time. But after seeing that the valve was left on, gas has just sat in this carburetor for a decade. And if you know anything about the newer gas, it is really rough on carburetors or anything in general, just because of how it's made now. But let me see if I can find a carburetor and I'll come back. So I couldn't find a carburetor. So I attempted to fix this one. I sat there and sprayed this thing down with it off the mower with some PB, kept working the float back and forth until finally it freed up. The needle was stuck pretty good, so I got in there with some tiny needle nose behind the float, worked it till it broke free, and then sat there spraying PB in the inlet and blowing compressed air in here and closing the needle by using the float, and did that back and forth until it all freed up. Now the pin is rusted solid in here. I wasn't able to get that out to actually take the float off, so I don't know if there's any holes in it or what the condition is. All I know is needle is free, the float is free, and the main jet in the bottom is clear. I broke out as much loose rust as I could from here. It's still pretty bad. and I'm sure it'll cause problems even if it does run down the road, but maybe this will be a temporary solution. The only thing that really cleaned up nice was the plug for the bottom of the bowl, or what I believe to be the mixture adjustment. Yeah, because this would cut off or allow more fuel into that main jet in there in the bottom. Okay, so yeah, let's try to put this back together. I'm gonna go ahead and put a new piece of fuel line on this tank here while it's off. No use in putting on this brittle stuff. Once we have a new piece of line ran to the carburetor, we'll put some gas in it and see how bad it leaks. Okay, got the new fuel line ran to the tank. Got some gas put in it, and so far, surprisingly, there are no leaks. So I'm gonna set you guys up on the tripod and give this thing a crank and see if I can't start it up off of its own fuel source. Actually, I think I found part of the problem. Yeah, I didn't connect that back up. It was arcing to the plug. So before I make any adjustments, let me try to run it with that connected. Okay, I took the body off of the Dixon, which is extremely easy if you've never worked on one of these before. You take a screw out of here, screw out of here, take two wing nuts off the front of the body, there and there. Take the handles off, and then undo this quick plug for the ignition switch, and the whole body and seat lifts off just like that, which is pretty nice. Reason I did this is because only the right side would pull in forward and reverse. The left side, the handle just fell back, and all you could smell was a belt burning all the time. So having worked on these before, I knew it had something to do with these clutches. Now sitting here and looking at this, you can see how close this side is to the drum, okay, or the clutch. So basically the way this works, if I push with my foot here, want to go forward, oops, oh, it's hard to show. Forward or reverse, it pulls it further or closer to this drum. Basically it changes variable speed and which direction you're going. So this side being so far away, it's not able to contact that and basically propel this side of the mower. And I was wondering, I must be missing a spring since I have spring tension forward but not back. And I was looking here, and you see how this side has this spring washer nut here? That's what we're missing. I saw the stud sticking up and thought that looked out of place. Well, that's what's gone. So this has worked its way back off or done something, and now it's missing. So if I put or come up with something like that on this side, maybe that'll fix our issue. All right, we've made some progress. Didn't have a spring that was as stiff as what that side has, so I had to stack two of the thickest ones I could. Ran a nut down on it. Came over to this adjustment here and brought this closer to our clutch to match the other side. So the closer you bring it, I guess the more contact area you have, the less movement you'll have before it actually engages one way or the other. And then the last thing I did was, this side was still way off from the other. So to match that up, I lengthened this rod here until they matched. And then I rolled it back and forth to make sure there was no drag on the clutches when they're in neutral. Make sure that everything's nice and free. So it's not perfect. I see more adjustments. I'm just not smart enough to figure it out. Of course, I didn't look at a manual, so I'm just doing this all by freehand. So it looks like we have more adjustments here if we need them. One of them I see, let's see if I can explain this. If you tighten this nut down, it'll move this whole side, kind of where your neutral is. And you can do the same by adjusting the nut on the bottom side for this spring and adjust the tension, basically adjust where neutral is, all of that. Again, I'm not smart enough to understand it, but a little bit of redneck ingenuity, and I think we can make it work at least, move forward. And that's all I really care about at this point. Once we find out if it works, I can do more research into it and try to fix it up right. So let me put the body back on and we'll test it out. just to finish out the video on the Dixon zero turns, don't worry, this isn't the one I was working on. This is a parts mower. I ended up selling it for $175. And the reason is because you saw in that last video clip that it left me stranded in the middle of the yard. Well, it turns out once those chains got limbered up, I lubed them up once they kind of worked the rust off. Turns out they were extremely loose and they would just jump off every couple seconds after that. It kept getting worse and worse. Basically, it needed all new chains put on it. And I just didn't want to mess with that. So I sold it how it was. And somebody came and got it the next day for $175. Plus, we had another parts mower at a different property, and we sold that for an additional $40. They only had room for 2, so they left this one behind, and that's okay because there's not much left on it. But for a free mower, getting almost 200 bucks out of it, you can't hardly beat that. I had a couple hours of work in it, but overall, it was worth the experience. I got to save it. The guy's excited. He's going to finish restoring it. So overall, all around, a win. So I'm going to take this load to the scrap yard, see what I can get out of all this, and the yard will be a little bit cleaner.